Hello, everybody. It is Friday, April the 22nd. This is your post-daily news show. I am John Pollock, and today we are going to be discussing the future of cable, the future of streaming. And by the time this video is over, you are going to know what the answers are in all of those key categories, because we have the man himself joining us from Wrestlenomics headquarters in upstate New York. Brandon Thurston of Wrestlenomics is with us. Hello, Brandon.
Hello, I'm coming to you live from the mobile Wrestlenomics studio broadcast booth. Here I am.
Yes.
Glad to be with you, John.
This is a landmark event here with Brandon joining us on wheels as we speak, and we have lots to go through because as I've been following this Netflix story this week, I definitely thought of Brandon Thurston immediately that I wanted to talk about with that. But before we get to the future of streaming, Brandon, let's go over just a couple of notes coming out of the past 24 hours. Starting off with the Dynamite numbers. They were up against the NBA playoffs this week. They did go against those play-in games last week, but this week down 5% in viewership and down just a percentage in 18 to 49. I would say that, finishing below or above everything outside of the NBA, I thought they were going to be hit a lot harder than they were on Wednesday. Did you have any solid thoughts on this past Wednesday's number? Was this in line with what you expected? And do you think that they might hold up better this year against the NBA playoffs with what they have to present?
I mean, this is a fine number for them. The two NBA playoff games that were on TNT, Turner competing with itself.
That's right.
We're number one and number two on all of, if you include broadcast primetime, beat everything on broadcast as well. And so did the Inside the NBA episode that was on right after the late game. In the Wrestlenomics Predict the Demo rating game in the Wrestlenomics Discord on the Post Wrestling server, I think I predicted a 0.36, and it was 0.37. So a little better, I guess, than I was expecting. I can tell you that it's been made clear to me that AEW is happy with this number, and this was consider the same week of last year. They were not going against the NBA, and they did the same demo number as this week did. So there's that. A decent number. They're doing well. We're in that time of April now, where a year ago in April, we're now past the point where the Wednesday Night Wars have come to an end. It's been a year now since the war has been over, and now we're comparing Dynamite's numbers to when they had Wednesday night to themselves as far as being a wrestling program. So it's the year-over-year comparisons that a lot of people have been pointing out, that Dynamite has been up year-over-year in the ratings, which is very true, much more than any other wrestling program. Those comparisons are going to start becoming more challenging now that Dynamite is being compared to a time when it was not going against NXT.
Do you expect anything, and it's probably too early now, that once you are approaching the time period when we're going to see significant talks when it comes to renegotiation time of AEW, whether it be, shining more of a spotlight, getting its profile out there of, really making a big deal of that growth and getting that message out to, as much as you can, just in terms of that focus. Like WWE has such a foothold to me in that kind of perception to, key decision makers that, like, I think like a whole strategy needs to be in place for AEW as it is going into what is like the most crucial negotiation of the company's history.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what they have now in terms of their TV rights value, it's 43 3/4, about $44 million a year. That's about 1/10 of what WWE gets for Raw and SmackDown combined. Now, Raw and SmackDown add up to more hours per week than what AEW is giving. It's 5 for Raw and SmackDown. It's 3 hours for Dynamite and Rampage. But even so, if you look at the viewership that Dynamite's delivering and Rampage, if you add it all together, if I've done these donut charts lately, trying to look at if you imagine WWE and AEW are part of the same pie, and consider the watch time, the number of hours on linear TV that they're delivering for their networks, WWE is delivering about 74% of the watch time between Raw and SmackDown. We're not including NXT here because we're trying to think about value, and we know what the value is of Raw and SmackDown. NXT probably not worth that much. But WWE's delivering about 74% of that watch time. AEW's delivering about 26%. I'm talking about the demo here. Mm-hmm. But they're only getting 9% of the value. 26% of the watch time is being delivered by AEW, but only 9% of the pie are they getting in terms of the money? So now viewership won't be the only factor. Other factors will be, what your ad rates are. There's been a lot of controversy and discussion about, well, what's AEW's relationship like with its partners, and the Domino's controversy with Nick Gage and the pizza cutter and so forth. The criticism that some people brought up towards AEW just recently with the Adam Page thing and the barbed wire crown and so forth. So these are speculation that we don't have any real solid reporting here that their ad rates are suffering or anything like that. They may or may not be. I don't know. But there's those things, and the synergy that you offer to your network in terms of, can I get people to watch whatever they were promoting the other night? We want people to stick around to watch that food show after Dynamite with the rat in the kitchen.
Rat in the kitchen. Yes.
Yes. So how's that doing? I should probably be monitoring that more closely. Are people sticking around after Dynamite? Those are all the things that will come into play there. But you can look at Dynamite's value and say, well, they're being way underpaid, and you can understand why they're being underpaid in the first place, because Dynamite, when they got the upgrade even that they did get in January 2020, they only had 3 months of a track record behind them, and they were kind of an unknown quantity. And now it's more clear that AEW is here to stay.
This week you also put out some great breakdowns of AEW's business. Just throwing out the question: is AEW's business growing? And I imagine this was one that you immediately disabled all comments. I'm sure that there was
no. That has
you did not
effect.
on this one.
That has a reverse effect. That only lures people out to be even more combative. So it's just let it be chaos, and I don't read it.
Well, it's a great strategy nonetheless. But we don't have to delve into to Twitter culture. But just diving into first on the AEW side, I think that you really put like a spotlight on many different key metrics, and starting off just with Google searches. Do you look at that as maybe, because I know you have delved a lot into quarter hours, YouTube views, Google searches. What is your experience of like what you believe is like the best representation of a popularity spike, or where a company, where a performer stands just in terms of, that information that you are seeking out?
I think web search tells us a lot if we're looking at a large period of time. If we're looking at least months, ideally quarters or years, I think it can tell you a lot about, it tells you a lot about mindshare and just how much people are thinking about something. Yes, people search when they don't know a person. You see a spike in debuts, for instance. You see a spike when there's unfortunate news. And one of the leaders of quarter 1 2022 among wrestling personalities was Scott Hall, because he unfortunately passed away. Chris Benoit in 2007 is a big deal. But I think it tells us a lot about, and I've looked at, it tells us a lot about business. And I've looked at, other patterns, especially if you look at like year over year, and you look at, what's Impact's rating been doing when it changed to all those different networks, and it appeared to lose buzz perceptibly. It also declined in web search. Ring of Honor, and its sort of cooling off period in the late 2010s or so. That we saw that in web search also. New Japan now lately, especially in the U.S., we're seeing that cool off on the U.S. web search. We can narrow it down by all these regions, fortunately. So I think it does tell us something quite meaningful if we're looking at a large period of time.
What we can also see, just in terms of AEW's online strategy, specific when it comes to YouTube. WWE is such a monster in this field. Where do you assess kind of AEW's YouTube strategy and where they stand just in terms of using that specific platform?
So their YouTube views are up. Compared to WWE, the year-over-year comparisons for WWE are not so favorable, because I've asked around about this, and I haven't got super clear answers, but they've done something to the YouTube channel, taken videos off, I guess, for one thing, to appease Sony in India. A lot of that viewership is from India, and I think to appease their TV partner in India, they've windowed that content, so the highlights of Raw and SmackDown, I don't believe you can see in India until about a day later. But something happened, too, at the beginning of the Peacock deal where they did something, and now the year-over-year comparisons are lower because of that, too.
There was also that period that it might have predated the Peacock deal, but I do remember at one point, for a long time, they were putting up segments like as Raw was going on, and then they made the conscious effort to wait till after Raw was ending to put up videos and such. But I can't remember the exact timeline, but I'm pretty sure that predated Peacock
right.
as well. But that was, that was an argument people were making that, man, they're making it very easy for me to just have the key segments of Raw curated, and I can just go through YouTube, and I don't even have to wait till the next day to go through, the key segments that I'm up to date on, and no need to turn the show on.
Yeah, for sure. No, and something I've been doing in my computer is now running a script every hour and collecting all this information on every video. But what I've seen is that WWE, especially if we look at the data that we get from Social Blade, which tells us the video view activity across the entire channel, WWE is just monstrously above AEW or any other player. But I can look at the new content, which is something I've been tweeting lately and I've been doing charts on, is that if you look at the new content, the highlights, let's say, of Raw, SmackDown, compare them to Dynamite and Rampage, the Wheeler, Yuta, and Jon Moxley highlight from Rampage eventually exceeded any other WWE clip in the same week. So that new content, those new clips, those highlights of the weekly programs between WWE and AEW are getting quite comparable. WWE, though, has been on YouTube since 2006 or whatever it is, and they have an enormous library, which, just comes with being WWE and being around for a long time and investing in social media early, investing in YouTube early. They've got a huge library of content that's constantly collecting views, and AEW's only been around for a few years.
So I would encourage people to go check this out. Brandon put out an AEW version earlier this week, going through television numbers, pay-per-view buys, YouTube views, and Google web search, and then putting out one with WWE as well this week. So we get a breakdown of both to check out.
The moral of the story, if I just add one more thing, is that AEW's popularity seems to be up based on TV ratings, based on pay-per-view buys. It's supported by YouTube views and Google as well. So if there's any questions about is AEW really growing its audience? At this moment, we can say, yeah, it certainly looks like it. Its profitability, another question. And I think WWE's popularity has declined. I've said this many times. I think WWE's popularity has declined from about 2016 to 2020. And I think we're seeing that flatten now. It's stabilizing. That's what I see in web search, especially. I think they're starting to, the decline in popularity, we all know their financial picture is tremendous, but the decline in popularity seems to be stabilizing at the moment.
Do you put any stock into what has stabilized that popularity over the past month? Does that directly coincide with WrestleMania build, a generally positive reception to WrestleMania this year, or do you just see this as kind of hitting a baseline that there is just the fact that they have met that stabilization point?
It's a good question. Maybe part of it is being on Peacock, and more people have Peacock this year than last year. And when I say stabilized, it's like Q1 this year in web search, for what that's worth, we can debate. But Q1 of this year is better than Q1 of last year, which is also the lead up to WrestleMania. It'll be interesting to see what Q2 is like, because that actually does contain WrestleMania in April. I don't know. WrestleMania to me felt like a bigger deal this year in terms of attention than it did last year. Roman Reigns feels like a bigger star, I might argue, than last year. I don't know. All the celebrities, Logan Paul, I don't know.
I think as we also, come off of this Cody Rhodes story, I mean, that is something that more so attached to what you just mentioned about Google search activity, is that those type of transactional stories, there's always a significant amount of intrigue. And it was interesting just listening to sort of, I was listening to a show about sort of the NBA's thought process on your Wojnarowskis and such, that they love the fact that these guys are out there and the news that is broken, because we have an off season, and that kind of transactional news, it makes us a 12-month a year type of sports topic that is going to have news 12 months of the year, and that is going to keep that conversation going. And when we see major figures going back and forth, a CM Punk, we can see what that spike was, and that's going to be on the high side. But even a Cody coming back, and just all of the other metrics that get affected by that re-engage an audience that maybe has been a lapsed fan, that is tuning into Raw now, that is seeking out more news coverage, that those kinds of back and forths, I think we are going to see spikes here and there when it comes to activity, just based on having a thriving competitor and having two-way traffic when it comes to talent.
Yeah. WWE might, I don't know. If they were being honest, WWE might argue that the competition motivates you to produce a better product and more popular product. I don't know, but I don't know what WWE would do about it, but the kinds of things you're talking about with the NBA and the news stories, like real legitimate news stories, these are the kinds of things that WWE, at least in its history, have always tried to ignore. And I guess that just comes from the legacy of being this pro wrestling medium where you don't acknowledge reality and you create your own reality. But that that's in my bubble, that is a big deal. There's the story between WWE and AEW and the story of somebody like Cody Rhodes moving over and people going the other way and so forth.
So one of the reasons we want to have you on this week was the big Netflix story. And Brandon, this week, some headlines coming out of this story. Are you ready for this? Have we had enough Netflix? Welcome to Netflix apocalypse. End of an era as Netflix faces stagnation challenges. And my favorite one for you. Netflix subscriber woes suggest streaming wars have started to buffer. So is
Very
this
nice.
is this
the equivalent of wrestling moves in the headline, I think.
Yes. Netflix takes devastating pile driver, hits rock bottom, stunning to the investment community. And I'm amazed by how quickly that this reaction has been, that this has now become a referendum on streaming and, where the worldwide leader in streaming is going. Like maybe some of this, this concern is very much warranted, but at the same time, just give me a little bit of your reaction. First of all, just to the coverage this week with such a sizable drop that Netflix has taken, like 36% its stock dropped this week.
Yes, a sizable drop to my net worth too.
That's
I've
right.
I've held some Netflix shares. I've held them long enough though that I'm up compared to what it is now, fortunately. But
You got your shares in what it's been years and years, correct?
So I was looking at my lots because this is happening. So the lots are the when you make the purchases or the moves. I most of them I got in 2013 when it was like $40 some odd a share.
Oh wow.
But I did make some stupid buys later that when it was way above where it is today. But yeah, it's I think we're coming to the point now, and compound this with the news that like CNN Plus didn't even last a month in 2022, where we're learning where the saturation point is for streaming, just by way of having to analyze these metrics. I've realized that all these different media, they kind of have different maturity levels. Like linear TV is on the decline. You have to take that into account, that people are cutting the cord and there's fewer traditional TV subscribers over time. And up until now, at least, streaming video has been the opposite, that it's an immature medium that hasn't been fully embraced by the entire population yet, but it's going in that direction. And social media is another one where we've seen, I was just looking it up earlier today, now we're seeing Facebook's daily active, monthly active users flattening out. Twitter's been flattened out for a while. Twitter doesn't even like to talk about its monthly active users anymore. They prefer to talk about their monetized active users. So they're not the only ones in investor relations that like to change the conversation. But yeah, it's streaming has come to it's a sponge now. It's been fully saturated, and everybody sees the opportunity that's in streaming. And I think nobody knows where cable subscribers plateau in terms of people cutting the cord, and we're down to a little under, I think, 80 million subscribers in the U.S. for traditional TV. Netflix is somewhere around 60 million in the U.S. for a comparison. A few years ago, they started to report U.S. and Canada together, but if you extrapolate the population and assume that Netflix subscribers are evenly distributed across the U.S. and Canada relative to their population, then that would put Netflix at around 60 million subscribers. And the story here, that the reason why Netflix stock has collapsed is because subscribers did not grow this in the most recent quarter, in Q1 versus Q4, but it had been. I've been tweeting the charts today and yesterday. It's been a staircase going up and up and up and up and up until now, and they're forecasting that they're going to lose subscribers in the following quarter. So Netflix is the one that's the earliest to the game here. So I think they're the best test to see where's streaming at. And obviously there's all these competitors now, as everybody's identified the opportunity here that's here for streaming. And you got Disney Plus and HBO Max and so forth that are in there too. Peacock, let's not forget. But yeah, it's this is where I think digital media, a lot of different kinds of digital media in 2022 are reaching their plateau, and I don't know what happens for linear TV. As I've been following the ratings, I don't have a Nielsen subscription, unfortunately, but we do have Showbiz Daily that gives us quite a bit of data that I've been able to scrape. And P50 plus, people over the age of 50, their TV viewership has not declined over the years. People in the 18 to 34 age bracket absolutely has declined. But, I think I've tweeted, how is linear TV supposed to die if people over the age of 50 are not tuning out? They're not cutting the cord. They may be dabbling in streaming, but they're still watching linear TV. And I think we're going to see this environment where there's going to be traditional TV for a long time to come. And there's going to be streaming in some form for a long time to come. And a lot of these streaming companies and streaming platforms are probably going to have to
Oh, we are, Brandon has been frozen here, much like Netflix's growth. So we will venture here to hopefully, let's see if we can, we have lost Brandon temporarily, but we will venture to reconnect as we go over the
there I am.
Netflix issue.
Sorry.
There, oh, he is back.
Sorry.
Yes, look at that. It looks like the future of streaming and Brandon buffering.
Future of my hotspot. It just went out for some reason.
But yeah, you bring up like such an interest. Like this to me is like the push and pull of so many of these companies is, where we place, how much emphasis we place on. Everyone needs a streaming company. Everyone needs to have that up and launched. But if you're ESPN, how much are you dedicating to ESPN Plus when cable? I'm with you. Like I do not. I've heard like smart people believe that in 5 years, ESPN is going to be a direct to consumer model that cuts out cable, and I cannot fathom that when you're essentially like this shines a spotlight in, are you abandoning one service in cable for a less profitable one in streaming that is not going to transfer over those cable subscribers to streaming, specifically 50 plus, that I think like you need to be able to service that audience, which is still an extremely profitable business for yourself. And that is what these smaller companies are going to have to judge when it comes to like how much they are going to dedicate and the incredible amounts that are being sunk into establishing these streaming platforms and getting something like a CNN Plus that after 30 days they're throwing in their notice that they cannot go forward with this.
Yeah, I guess one thing we can lay on the table is that cable is still profitable. Everybody talks about cable dying, the cable bundle is dying, but it's still a profitable business, even as the customers for that business are going down. And Netflix is profitable, but I don't know about all these other companies. Certainly Peacock is one of the newer players. It's not profitable. I don't know that any of these other streaming businesses on an isolated basis are profitable in themselves. But they're an investment towards the future, expecting that there's going to be a future with even less cable subscribers and even more engagement on streaming. So I don't know. We seem to have been at the end of this rapid diversion in behavior, though. So we'll see. And like I said, what I think is probably going to happen in the next couple of years is that you're going to see some of these companies merge services. You're definitely going to see Discovery and Warner, which are merged companies now. Mm-hmm. They're going to bundle HBO Max and Discovery Plus together. They're not going to bundle CNN Plus. They're just getting rid of it, I guess. The new bosses there decided they don't like that service anyway. Interesting too, by the way, that CNN Plus, CNN News, cable news is this thing that is especially popular with people over the age of 50. I know Fox News is really the biggest one, but CNN Plus, even most of that viewership is P50 plus, overwhelmingly. And that didn't succeed, maybe because streaming is just this younger, skewing product. But anyway, you're going to see more of these companies merge, and more of these companies make agreements with each other, if not merge their companies together, so that it becomes something that's more like a cable bundle, through a streaming pipe.
We also have heard this week from a frequent voice that we hear on the WWE earnings calls, and that is Laura Martin of Needham, who has kind of been the go-to analyst when it comes to Netflix, and she has been very strong on Netflix and their need to innovate. And I was listening to an interview with her this week, and apparently Netflix is has at least gone on the record stating that they will add an advertising tier. But also, she suggests more content built around live sports and news being something that Netflix needs to get into. And I would say that, in response to this week for Netflix, what's going to come out of that to me is a lot of experimentation and probably expediting a lot of like theoretical changes they could make that now the investment community, they're going to be looking for concrete changes. And live sports has been something that has very much been attached to Netflix as a potential future avenue for them. And that could very much speed up the process.
And gaming is something that they talked about getting into. An ads tier is something that they finally admitted that they're interested in. And if you're sharing your Netflix subscription with another household, they're coming for you eventually. I think a lot of these companies have. I haven't read over the terms of service like anybody, but I bet that they're sharing a subscription is certainly not illegal, or it's not in violation of their terms of service, or if it is, they're not enforcing it. And I think everybody's embracing this. All these streaming platforms are sort of embracing it because they'd rather have the growth and the behavior and get your habits now, and then they'll figure out a way to monetize you, one by one later. So.
Well, we continue to battle with streaming, which is appropriate for the theme of this show.
Sorry, I'm here.
All right.
We're good. I think we're good, right?
All right, we'll keep going. If we lose you again, we can just switch to audio because your audio is coming in clear.
Okay.
But yes, that is, I think that is kind of going to be what's interesting, Brandon, is that this quarter, like Netflix's revenue was up something like 10% this quarter. It's not as though this was a money losing quarter for Netflix, but it shows you just how essential the subscriber growth is. Like that is what is going to be the pressure point when it comes to stockholders, is seeing this continued growth. And it would seem that the challenge now is to curb this loss, and whether it is clamping down on passwords or coming up with brand new ideas to reverse this trend, because 222 million subscribers, that is not going to be satisfactory as a ceiling for Netflix, which is what they are staring at.
Yeah, well, it's about speculation, right? It's you may be a profitable company, but we kind of expected that. What wasn't known was where the ceiling is. Where's the saturation point for Netflix? And we found out that it's, for the moment, there might be incremental growth in the future, but for the moment it's somewhere around 220 million subscribers worldwide, and the growth in the US Canada region was slowing down anyway. And the areas of the world that they probably still have more growth to gain are probably areas where the price point is lower and there's less revenue per user to extract there.
Do you look at when we are going into these WWE and AEW negotiations, like how many of these streaming players are going to be potential options here? Like I see, if Netflix gets involved in live sports, that one seems to be like a pretty far out one. But ESPN Plus is going to be very interesting because, UFC's rights are going to be up soon. And UFC to me stands to be head and shoulders above WWE and AEW by a sizable margin. And where like an HBO Max are going to fit into all of this. Like potentially, this is much more suitors at the table than we were looking at back in 2018, the last time WWE announced their renewal.
Yes, Nick Khan was right. It was only a matter of time for all these tech players to get involved. And I'm sure there's going to be a lecture about this on the next earnings call in a couple of weeks.
Nick Khan TED Talk, yes.
He will enlighten us. But yeah, I don't know. In terms of live sports, I was speculating with Chris Gullo the other night. Maybe you see something like, look at Fox. That looks kind of smart now. I know they were late to the game, but they didn't try too hard to catch up. They own Tubi, but that doesn't appear to be a huge investment. And they're not dumping, billions of dollars into something like Peacock to come up with their own subscription streaming service. So I don't know. Like maybe it makes sense for Netflix to merge with one of these traditional TV networks that haven't had great success, or in the case of Fox, just haven't invested that much in streaming, and maybe that works out for them some way. But I think there's going to be, definitely in WWE's case, I expect there to be some sort of streaming component to the next TV rights deal, in terms of maybe you see, I think you guys have talked about it, maybe you see Raw, select episodes of Raw are on Peacock in addition to the USA Network. And maybe that even becomes increasingly the case over the course of the deal, if it's 5 years or something like that. But I do expect there to be some sort of streaming component to the next deal, especially if we still do see cable subscriptions decline over time and streaming behavior increase. I expect that to happen. I expect it to be the case that wherever Raw is, say, is going to be the same place where the streaming is, NBC Universal. I don't expect we're going to see, so that's why it makes me skeptical of that. Like, what's Amazon going to do if they buy WTV rights? I don't know that being on Amazon Prime is enough, even though, yes, there's more people in the United States that have a Amazon Prime subscription than own a pet. It's a lot of people, but I don't know that that's a high enough reach platform in terms of people scrolling through it and watching it. The big talking point for Thursday Night Football is that it's going to have the lowest viewership ever because it's going to be on Amazon Prime. Nobody's going to watch it. We'll see. But I think it's really important for wrestling programs to be on a really high reach platform like the USA Network, like TNT, TBS. Fox is even better because they have all these other businesses that they have to generate revenue in, including ticket sales and merchandise sales. It's a promotional tool. TV is still, even though now it's where they get most of their revenue from. So, and in terms of, let's think about AEW, where's their streaming home? I guess maybe a bundled HBO Max and Discovery Plus, but we'll see. That's further in the future.
One thing you do such a great job with, Brandon, is that you go beyond the numbers, and you can also talk about when it comes to business philosophy. So I'm going to throw this out to you, whether it be Tony Khan or Nick Khan, they're getting ready for one of their own TED Talks, and they call up Brandon Thurston, and they want to pick your brain. Okay, these negotiations are coming up, and they have just an obscene offer for, and this would probably be more so realistic for AEW than WWE. But let's say that in these rounds of negotiations, there is such a gigantic offer that could take them exclusively streaming. And this goes to our prior subject of, if you are AEW, are you looking at just the most financially lucrative deal, or are you looking at streaming? Like, there is a ceiling to our growth there, that if we don't have representation on cable television to grow that audience, could something like this thrive as just a streaming product that HBO, just loosens the purse strings to offer for AEW?
I don't think so. I don't think that makes sense to, let's say, AEW Dynamite and Rampage only on a streaming platform, not any kind of traditional TV distribution. I don't think that makes sense. And you can pay, they can offer billions of dollars, but my feeling would be, if it were me, is that you can offer me all the money in the world, but is this going to work out long term? It's going to be a short-term deal in terms of in multiple years, but eventually that deal is going to end, and after 4 or 5 years, then I'm going to be left with whatever level of popularity I have at the end of that. And if you want to be in the wrestling business for more than 4 or 5 years, I don't know that makes a lot of sense. It's, as much as younger people don't watch traditional TV anymore, being on a major TV network is still a really big deal.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's overall like kind of the theme of what we're talking about here, like the value of cable television that continues. And I think will continue. Will it be diminished over the next 10 years? The numbers would suggest yes, but to say it will be irrelevant in 10 years, that I am certainly very hesitant to declare. But a fascinating topic nonetheless. And before we wind things down, Brandon, Raw was in your hometown of Buffalo, New York. You did not make it to Raw. Did you miss the double commitment ceremony and lie detector test?
I missed it. Yeah, I don't know how I missed that one. Chris Gullo was there, my co-host for Wrestlenomics Radio. He was there. We will talk about his experience, how much of a smile was put on his face. We will test it. No, I didn't make it, but I heard that there were, during the double commitment ceremony, there were Buffalo Bills chants, certain chants that are popular for Buffalo Bills fans to do, that were happening during that segment. I didn't watch any. I didn't watch any of Raw. So I don't know if that came across on TV. I'm curious to know.
You could definitely hear the cat calls. They were singing "Shout." I mean, they were having fun. They were keeping themselves entertained during the double commitment ceremony. Before we wrap up here, we do have some super chats for Brandon. The first one comes from DJ Convoy. I don't expect Brandon to give away any proprietary secrets or get in trouble, but can he please tell us why he believes Turner owns a stake in AEW? Brandon, you have theorized this. You have not reported this.
No, I believe it to be the case. I think that it probably is part of the deal. It incentivizes Turner to want to see AEW succeed and to promote them, and I think that's part of the deal. And I was talking to someone recently, not anybody who works at AEW, and speculating about this, and that person had heard that too. So I think that's what's happening. That gave me some more confidence that that's the case. But we'll see. And when we're talking about all these TV rights negotiations, I think one thing that you'll see too is rather than renewing either of these properties, you might see them. If I'm either one of these networks, I would just rather buy this company rather than having to, open up another lease on my apartment here. I would rather just buy them outright. Because that makes a lot of sense. If I can buy, for a few $1 billion, if I can buy AEW, or probably less than that, if Tony's even interested in that, which I tend to think not, but I don't know. Or if I can buy WWE, that's affordable for one of these big media companies. What's not affordable is buying a sports organization that's even bigger than that.
Last one here, as
destruction happens out here.
Yeah, that's the cable industry outside. It's just falling apart, everybody. It's coming crashing down.
Of cable collapsing before our eyes.
Okay, this is a very random question. Do you have any idea if OWE Wrestling is still a company or doing anything at all? Yes, this was
It's a good question. I don't know.
I have not heard anything about OWE. Pretty much some buzz going in, but then the pandemic happened, and that largely shut things down. So I do not have any update on it.
And Shima, who is very involved in that, is doing things all over the place in Japan and so forth. So and remember they had like a relationship. They're supposed to have a relationship with AEW too at the beginning. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, they brought up a lot of the crew that SummerSlam weekend here in Toronto right before AEW was going on television. But yeah, we will seek to get an update there. My last question, Brandon, before we let you go, kind of tying everything together here, is that you and I in this wrestling space, we kind of operate similar. We have like our Patreons and such. And I question to you, and I just read this book on the AOL Time Warner merger, so this is fresh on my brain. Is how you would imagine your coverage would differ if you were in a position where quarter to quarter you had to post growth every single quarter, and how that would alter your kind of coverage and what kind of stories you would focus on and ones you would not. Because I've given it a lot of thought, and I it's one of the reasons I think the Patreon model really helps, especially with news. But if you were in a position where week after week or quarter after quarter, you had to be able to show growth of YouTube views, of web hits, of Twitter traffic, that I think like that in a nutshell, it very much affects news coverage.
Yeah, I don't have the stomach for that. I wouldn't do it. I would do something else. I would quit and start a different, Patreon where I don't have to do that. I don't know. I've been thinking. I don't know. I don't know if news organizations should even need to be profitable. They have a different purpose, and there's all sorts of problems that can.
I think it's a horrible a reliance and attachment that you have when news has to be profitable. But man, that toothpaste is out of the tube, and unfortunately, I don't think there's any going back to that. But at least on a micro level that we operate at, I just think it's something that I am personally, after reading so much about this week, I'm very glad I'm not in a position where I have to look at that, because I think it completely alters your business structure. Where
I think ad revenue especially. I think I've talked to you guys about this. I think ad revenue especially, it incentivizes hysteria. It incentivizes things that make people click, things that attract attention, and that's definitely a competing interest with, I don't know, whatever I hope we're doing, informing people, trying to have good conversations, trying to shed light on things that are in the public's interest. So, yeah.
And always answering that elusive question: who's a draw?
Who's a draw?
Yes, the big one.
Public
And
needs to know.
the last word from Chris Ely. Sup, guys? No shirt today, Thurston. Is it Casual Friday?
Sure, let's call it that. That works. I did consider it when I left the home this morning, but I decided not to for a number of reasons, including other things that I have to return to in a moment.
Well, Brandon, I want to thank you so much for jumping on with us as our official business correspondent here on the Post Daily News Show. What is coming up this Sunday? We'll get a live report from Chris of Raw at the KeyBank Center, I believe is the latest name for this arena.
KeyBank
I know
Center.
it as the Marine Midland Arena at one point, but it's gone through
Midland
many.
Arena, the HSBC Arena, and now the KeyBank Arena. I think they've all merged into KeyBank now or something. But yeah, I don't know. We'll talk about probably something along the lines of what we talked about today in terms of the AEW and WWE breakdowns we've done recently. Maybe some TV ratings. Who knows? I haven't put together slides yet. That's for tonight and tomorrow.
All right. Well, look out for that. Wrestlenomics every Sunday drops here on the Post Wrestling Network, and follow the man at Brandon Thurston. Great charts this week, as I said on Thursday's show. Not just great information, but so aesthetically pleasing, Brandon. Your graphs are second to none.
And it's great to be here to talk about things in addition to wrestling. I'm trying to make the next pivot too. Maybe I can be not just a wrestling reporter, but a media analyst too.
We will update your name key for the next time. Media analyst Brandon Thurston. It's always great to chat about these topics with you, Brandon. You have such a diverse knowledge of so many different areas, and we appreciate you taking some time out in the Wrestlenomics studio on Wheels to join us today. And that's going to wrap things up. We're back tonight. Rewind to SmackDown, 11:05 p.m. Eastern Time, right after SmackDown and Rampage, as we will be going through 3 hours of wrestling programming with Wei Ting. So that is it. Thank you for tuning in to the Post Daily News Show.